Three. Okay, welcome to Voice of San Diego at Home. My name is Scott Lewis. I'm the CEO and editor-in-chief at Voice of San Diego. You know, some of these shows, I have a lot to say. I have a lot of things that I want to get across. And this one, I want to just listen. There's a lot of things that happen and that are happening that I want to understand better. And so one of the things that happened this weekend, I was... I got a call or a text on late, very early, let's see, Saturday, I guess it would be Sunday morning, from a friend who took this shot of Mesa. It was just a surreal moment. It gave a lot of us a lot of difficulty sleeping for a while. And then I think it was around exactly the same time, a lot of us watched this. This was the La Mesa City Council and the mayor.
Good morning. I'm Mayor Mark Arapastathis. This morning, the City Council and I have just concluded an emergency meeting. In light of ongoing events in the city of La Mesa, the entire City Council is very upset and disheartened. We are utilizing all available resources and have reached out to the state for all additional aid to assist us in this emergency. We are committed to the safety and well-being of all of our citizens. As of 1:30 this morning, the city manager is enacting a curfew that will last until 7 a.m. Please stay sheltered at home and please stay safe. Thank you.
Okay, well, joining me right now is Dr. Akilah Weber. She is a member of the La Mesa City Council. Oh, just lost her. Dr. Akilah Weber. She's a member of the La Mesa City Council. She's also an OB. She's actually a medical doctor. Oh, there we are, Dr. Weber. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you are at the clinic right now. You have patients that you need to see. You have quite a life these days. I want to, before we talk about that surreal meeting it must have been on Saturday and Sunday morning, talk to me about last week, what happened, what your reaction was when you saw the George Floyd video from Minneapolis, and then we'll start going from there.
Thank you so much for having me, Scott, and squeezing me into this time frame. I'm going to be honest with you. I could not watch the entire George Floyd video. There is so much that has happened in this country. There is so much that happened last week leading up to the George Floyd situation. I'm sure a lot of people remember the incident with the woman in the park with the dog, and calling the cops, and then other people that falsely accused African American males of doing horrific acts that they themselves had done. And so by the time it got to George Floyd, I could not watch the entire video. It was so horrific. It hurt me to my core.
Mm-hmm.
I am an African American. I am a mother of 2 boys. And it just seems like this is a pattern that we are continuing to repeat in this country.
How old are your boys?
6 and 8. They're 6 and 8 years old. And it's hard. I remember Trayvon Martin. I was pregnant with my oldest at the time. And when the verdict came in, I cried because I knew that I was having a boy and what that would mean in this country at this time.
Mm-hmm.
So I could not watch the entire video. My heart hurt. My heart hurt for his family. My heart hurt for this country. Because I realized the path that we were once again getting ready to go down.
There was an incident then also in La Mesa, a police officer and a rough encounter that he had with an African American man in, I guess it was a trolley stop area there. You issued a statement soon after that. It was La Mesa PD. It was not a trolley PD. It wasn't the transit system. What were you thinking about as you saw that, and as we hadn't seen really the protests start to pick up yet?
I was very concerned by the video. I was very disappointed in the video, especially given the current state where we were nationally at the time. But I also recognize the fact that we still don't have the clear picture of what exactly happened. We have a snippet
Mhm.
And so there were some allegations that were made by the police officer, which we didn't necessarily see in that video, but that doesn't mean that it didn't happen. We just need to see the full video. And
Mhm.
I also was wondering why that particular individual was approached in the first place. And so once we release that police body cam video, then we'll have a better assessment of exactly what happened. But I was concerned and very disappointed that this was happening in our city at all, but especially during this time.
So that incident makes La Mesa, that San Diego had not necessarily seen a lot of the same big protests that were going on in other parts of the community, but La Mesa, it starts Saturday. Seems like it was peaceful. Were you there? Did you see it? What was the day like for you on Saturday?
I did. I went down there. It was very peaceful. I was actually, like I've told many people, very proud of how peaceful it was in our city. People were out, they were frustrated, they were concerned with the things that continue to go on in this country, dealing around social justice. Um, and I was very happy to see that they were voicing their concerns in a very peaceful manner. Even when, they went on the freeway, no one was really getting it wasn't violent, right? There wasn't any destruction of property at that point. And so I felt like people were coming out. We heard them. And, we know that as a city, as a state, as a country, we need to do better in certain areas. And so we definitely heard them. And so at that point, I was proud. So a lot of people were there, and it was peaceful.
Hmm. What's your understanding of what happened then as the night progressed?
Well, as the night progressed, a lot of the original protesters, including some, people that were La Mesa residents, left. They left. They went home, and a different group of people came in that had a very different agenda and a very different motivation. Um, I always say, well, how do you even burn up a car? You have to come there with the intent and the equipment to do something like that. And so, people in La Mesa were very proud of our city. We love our city. We support our city. We support the businesses in our city. We recognize the fact that if we burn down a bank in our city, that means that it's going to be more difficult for us because now we're going to have to go out of our city to potentially get the services that we need, the groceries that we need, the sports equipment, the hair stuff. So we support our businesses, but it was a group of people that were not from La Mesa, and had a very different agenda.
Hmm. If you have questions, Dr. Weber may have a few minutes to answer some of them, so put them here. I'll make sure to filter them well. So then how does the mechanics even work for the city council to then be convened to have an emergency meeting like that? That must have been just surreal. Were you aware that things had gotten a little bit gnarly in the streets?
I like that word, gnarly. Um, So I was, because I was watching it. And, there were people that were out there that were streaming live on Facebook. And I saw all of the devastation and the destruction, and the news cameras as well were live streaming it. And I was on the phone constantly with our city manager, with our mayor. I even reached out to our assembly person, who I happen to have a direct line to say, hey, what's going on here? Do we need to start calling in the National Guard? What is it that we need to do? And so, very quickly, we started to reassess the situation. Our chief of police reached out to the county, because I don't know if a lot of people realize this, but La Mesa is a small city, and we do have a fairly small police department, comparison to other larger cities. So we only have a total of 66 police officers, two of which are not available at this time.
Hmm.
Um, and so, when you're dealing with that kind of gathering, and of course, not all 64 were working at the time, then we definitely need more resources. So the first step was to reach out to the county. They sent us what they felt they could. That gave us a total of around 250 officers. But then we really realized that we needed more. So we reached out to the state, and we requested for the presence of the National Guard. And unfortunately, that was denied because they had already been deployed to Los Angeles.
Fascinating. So, yeah, so there are some small cities in the county of San Diego that use the sheriff for
Hmm.
their police force. La Mesa is one of the few that has its own police force. And what you're saying is
Right.
there's only a few dozen of them, and that you wanted some more. So county sheriffs came in. Um, so so then you guys meet, and it becomes clear you need to declare an actual curfew. People need to get off the streets.
Exactly. Once we got denied by the state for the National Guard, we said we have to do something. And I spoke with the mayor and I said, we just need to meet. We need to get together and put our heads together and figure out what it is that we're going to do because we can't not do anything. We don't want our entire city to be devastated and ravaged. So we got together and that's when we set the curfew, and the next morning we met. We declared an official state of emergency in La Mesa, declared an emergency in our city, and that gave us the ability to reach out and get more resources, officially put our city manager in charge of dealing with these things, and also implementing another curfew that went into effect last night, much earlier than it did the night before.
What you went and saw, I think the next morning, everything at the downtown and at the shopping center. What was the extent of the damage, so people can get a feel for how it was impacted, and then what people rallied to do that day?
It was definitely devastating. Businesses with windows broken out. Um, People had come in and looted and removed things. I know in City Hall, they did set a small fire in City Hall. They removed a lot of the computer equipment there as well. And so, I think people were just really glad. There was glass, of course, everywhere. And that morning when I went down to our village area, I was extremely overwhelmed with gratitude, with the number of residents that were already out. And I was down there around 8 o'clock, and people were already there with their buckets and their brooms and their gloves. And we were just taking the glass down, removing it in these large trash cans, cleaning up. I mean, everyone was just there to help. It was beautiful, but it also just goes to show that like I said, we care about our city, we care about our businesses, we work together. We're a very small community, but we're a very strong community.
Was the police department properly ready for this, do you think? What lessons are you going to take away from what happened, both the lead up to what happened and then the actual mayhem that night?
Well, I think that our police officers, and I first want to thank our public safety officers, police and fire, because, and those that came in from other cities in the county, that came to assist, because they were really under siege on that night, and they did the very, very best that they could. Um, I think in the future, we definitely need to be prepared of possibilities like this. One of the unfortunate things that we didn't have any kind of warning, because this had not happened in San Diego yet, right? So we couldn't say, oh, last night, this is what they did over in this city, so we need to prepare better because they were in San Diego yesterday or Santee the night before. We unfortunately were the first. So we didn't have that kind of foresight. But I think in the future, if we hear that there is a large protest or march, um, we need to make sure that we have already alerted the county and already alerted the state that we may need additional resources, and also, have a better game plan for the businesses to say, this is what's happening. So maybe you all may want to prepare by where they're boarding up, because a lot of people were boarding up yesterday just in case something happened last night, or having, a few more people around your business just to make sure that it remains calm. We can definitely do that in the future when we know that we're going to be getting potentially a large protest.
Do you have a couple minutes to take some of these questions?
Sure.
Okay. Well, this one comes from Sean. Says, how are businesses viewing the situation moving forward? Will they continue boarding up at night? What's the sense you got from business owners in the area? Is it still pretty skittish, or is everybody ready to rally?
It's really hard within the business community, and I definitely, feel their pain. They've been through a lot these last few months. I mean, we have COVID, which really shut a lot of them down and has really, really hurt them economically. And now at the time when the state is finally loosing some of the restrictions and they're starting to open up and have customers come, then this happens. And so, they're concerned. They're concerned. Actually, on my way to clinic, I got a call from Mary England, who's in charge of the La Mesa Chamber of Commerce, because she's been getting a lot of calls today from her um, uh, members, and they want MTS to stop the trolley service again tonight. So, a lot of them don't feel comfortable at this point just going back to business as usual because there are still things that are happening within the San Diego County as far as protesting.
That's an interesting point. So do you think that's going to happen? They'll shut off trolley to La Mesa?
So we did last night, and I reached out to the CEO and the chair of MTS to make sure that they knew that we wanted the trolley service to be stopped at around 7 when our curfew went into place. But one of the things, in order for the trolleys to stop, is that we actually have to officially mandate a curfew. And so we have not done that yet. If we do that, then I'm definitely going to be reaching back out to MTS to see if the trolley service will stop again.
Let's talk about policing really quickly. You mentioned the connection you have at the state assembly. That happens to be your mother, Dr. Shirley Weber, somebody I've interacted with a lot. She's been on the front ends of a lot of reform legislation, including one that says, police cannot use deadly force without it being necessary, which was a standard that wasn't in place before. We have a question that came in from Mark that says, does La Mesa PD have a policy for body camera footage and releasing it? Do you happen to know the answer and the approach with body cam footage in La Mesa right now?
That's a great question. I do not believe that we have a policy in place because when Wednesday occurred, and one of my first things to the chief and our city manager was, we need to just release the body cam. People have been trying to figure out how to do that. So it will be done, but La Mesa was later in the stages of actually wearing body cameras for everybody, and so we don't actually have a policy in place yet.
Okay, I guess I would leave you or leave everybody with this question, and I hope you'd answer is you have these young boys, as you said, and as they grow up, what do you need to see happen to policing in America for you to feel more comfortable about them starting an independent life where you can't always protect them? What do you need to see? Is it tactics, or is it a much more dramatic reform, or some sort of elimination, or some sort of giant reform that needs to take place to make you feel more comfortable about your boys' lives going forward?
Well, I think that it is, there needs to be reform on many different levels. Okay, there needs to be more scrutiny on who is actually hired. One of the things when you look at the George Floyd situation, you find out that this officer had issues in other places before, right? And we oftentimes see that when there is one or two what we call bad apples, that when you start to look in their past, they've had this kind of repetitive behavior, potentially in other departments in other cities. And so I think that there needs to be a difference in hiring. You also need to make sure that your police force is diverse. And so, that's something that even in La Mesa, we need to look at to say, okay, how are we being represented? Do we have a good representation of different ethnic backgrounds and gender backgrounds when we're talking about who actually comprises our force? How often are you reviewing your policies and procedures? Are you keeping those up to date? I've talked to our chief about that in the past with a couple of things that were a little bit outdated. And then the other thing is, what is the relationship with the community? I do believe that many police forces need a community police oversight commission. And that was one of the things that I ran on, and one of the things that we've been working on finally in La Mesa, so that you have that sense of transparency, you have that community involvement, and you have that other layer of oversight when you do have complaints and issues. And then finally, when something does happen, what policies and procedures do you have in place so that they don't happen again? Are there repercussions? so that people know these are not acceptable actions. The vast majority of police are there because they love that community, they love their job, they're there to protect and serve. But unfortunately, when you have these isolated events, it taints that whole department. It puts more work on the officers that are there. It taints the whole city. And so people need to realize that those kind of behaviors will not be tolerated. And if they happen, that there are consequences.
And kids keep running by.
I get it. I get it.
Well, you have patience to get back to. I
do.
just one last quick thing. It's La Mesa. It seems so strange to have La Mesa, make the national headlines like that. I think this was a message that this can happen anywhere where there's tensions boiling up. Do you have a message for La Mesans as they go forward right now?
Yes, I just want to tell all the Masons, thank you so much. Your strength, we see it, we feel it, we need it. We will rebuild, we will be stronger for this, and we will definitely get through this, our residents and our businesses.
Well, tell your patients thank you for letting us borrow you for a little while, and I hope that things smooth out for you soon. Thank you, Dr. Weber.
Thank you so much, Scott. Have a good day.
You too. Well, a lot going on. Obviously, I'm interested in your feedback and in your questions. We can follow it up. Apparently, this is the time to run by. We also are interested in things you want to know about. We have people now looking at some police reform efforts that have been underway. Also, what is an unlawful protest? What is an unlawful assembly? Excuse me. How does that get determined? That seems to be the moment when these protests switch over. And so we'd like to understand that issue a little bit better, and we will be following so many of these issues. If you have any questions you want us to follow, this is the time. Let me know what you think. I'm still looking into some things with schools, obviously still worried about schools. And now imagine this situation if a lot of people don't have any place to go this fall. Let's figure out schools. We really need to do that. I've been looking into that and talking to a lot of people over the last few weeks or a few days, and I have some more to talk about on Wednesday when we do the show. Our team of investigative reporters out there trying to get a handle on what's going on. We're trying to make sense of what leaders are saying and find out the things that they don't want to say. And so we have investigative reporters out there doing that right now. You can follow that at voiceofsandiego.org. And thank you all for your support. And we will see you on Wednesday. And I look forward to talking about things then. If you have any questions, that's the episode we like to take questions on and just spend some time answering things. So thank you all for your support, and we will talk to you on Wednesday.